After the Second World War had ended, as many as 400,000 German servicemen were detained in prisoner-of-war camps around Britain. Author Robin Quinn has spent the last 3 years researching and writing about their experiences, and his findings have now appeared in a book.
The title of the book, Hitler's Last Army, comes from what one prisoner of war said. He looked back on the time when he was brought to England on a landing craft, having just been taken prisoner, and he, along with hundreds of others, were being marched along the road in one of the coastal towns, probably Gosport, on their way to the station to be transported onwards to a POW camp. And as they marched through the streets, a woman was standing on the pavement and just shouted out, "Look at them, Hitler's last army." But that has a secondary meaning as well, because all of the Germans who were taken prisoner when Germany surrendered in May 1945 were immediately demilitarized, as it were, and as soon as possible they were allowed to return to civilian life. And it finished up a couple of years later that the only German soldiers still in the pay of the German army and in German uniform in some cases were the POWs in British camps. The life of a prisoner of war during wartime, whether you were German or on the Allied side, was probably fairly similar. People had the same thoughts and hopes and expectations, whichever side they were on. But it was very different when the war came to an end, because the British and American prisoners in Germany were repatriated as soon as possible, whereas it was very different for the Germans who were held in Britain or in the United States, because they were kept for quite a long time after the war, predominantly as a labour force. They also felt that there weren't any bargaining chips. There weren't any Allied prisoners in German hands, and as one prisoner actually said to me, the war was over, they could do exactly as they liked with us, and we thought they'd take it out on us. Well, when I wrote the book, it wasn't intended to be exactly a military history of German prisoners of war in World War II. It was intended to be a human story, and the balance that I've tried to strike is between those personal recollections and feelings and emotions set against the factual background that explains it all and helps it all to make sense for the reader. In terms of the sort of person I think the book would appeal to, I've written it with two kinds of reader in mind. The first is somebody who enjoys books and likes a jolly good read and likes to know about other people's experiences and adventures. And I was very pleased indeed when a couple of people put a post on the internet to say that they'd read the book and enjoyed it and couldn't put it down because it was one of those good reads that just kept them occupied and absorbed. There is also the specific reader who is trying to find out something. Perhaps their father, their grandfather was in a British POW camp. They want to know what his life was like. What was the attitude of the guards towards the prisoners? How did they spend their time? And all that sort of detail is in the book. All of the people I interviewed, the German former prisoners of war, were very receptive to my questions. There are, of course, certain aspects which they would consider rather delicate, and in particular, of course, there was the issue of the concentration camps. What happened with all of the POWs in American or British hands was that they compulsorily had to watch a film of the concentration camps shortly after they had been discovered by the Allied troops in Germany, Poland, and so on. All of the men that I talked to said they were totally bewildered and upset and disgusted by what they saw. And as one man said to me, "I risked my life for that country, and I nearly lost my life for that country, and some of my comrades did lose their lives. He said, after that, I didn't want to be a German anymore. My mother wrote to me and said, come back, and I said, never. And he stayed in Britain and made Britain his home, and he's here still today.